So I'd love to introduce our panel today. I've got Joey Redner, from, the founder of Cigar City, Justin Clark, Mike Dilble from Tampa Bay Brewing Company, and Ken from Coppergale. Yep. Do we need, is there anyone else? I think we've got one more chair than we need, right? Okay. Are we good?
We got an extra chair.
Yeah, I think we got one more.
Okay.
Everyone's afraid to get near me.
So I don't know how many in the room have seen the news the news in the last year, but there's been quite a few laws that have been suggested in legislation. Let's start with, it's started from a consumer front. So consumers want growlers of a specific size. So would one of you guys like to take that and kind of explain what the consumer demand is for a growler, certain types of size of a growler? Anybody?
I'm sure we'd all like to talk, so you want to just direct it to whomever?
Okay, Justin, do you want to take that one? Come on.
All right, so yeah, there's been a lot of talk of the 64-ounce growler in the state of Florida. It is the industry standard of a growler. I think everyone in this room knows a growler is a package that you're able to take to your local brewery and take fresh draft beer to go, take it home. In our state, the 64-ounce growler isn't a recognized size. It's a half gallon. It's us, Mississippi, and Utah that do not allow the 64-ounce growler, though we can currently fill you a 32-ounce growler, a half gallon, and 128 ounces, or a full gallon. We just can't fill that, that donut hole in the middle. We can sell you the 232s to get to 64, but we can't sell you that 64-ounce package. So it's really a consumer bill. The consumers are coming to our tasting rooms. They're traveling from out of state and bringing their 64-ounce growler from their local brewery and asking us to fill it, and we can't. So the growler bill would really be a win for the consumers. It wouldn't really move the needle in our businesses, but the consumer wants it, so we're for it as well. And that's why we've been working to pass the 64-ounce growler bill here in the state of Florida. There has been some opposition, as we're all aware, and I think we're going to get into that as well.
Okay, so it's consumer driven. The consumers want a 64-ounce growler, and so that's brought forth to the legislature, because that's how it needs to pass. It needs to pass through the Florida State House and Senate. What happened along the way? There were some kinks thrown into the system. If you want to take that, or Mike, or whoever wants to jump in.
Keep going?
You want to go? Go.
Okay, so you know, legislation is definitely something that's become an important part of our businesses. Honestly, if I knew a career in beer would have got me so involved in politics and legislation, I probably would have paid a lot more attention in school. But anytime you go to pass legislation, it opens it up for discussion with opposition, supporters, etc. So when we got a bill introduced in both the House and Senate, there's other people that can work that bill up on Capitol Hill in Tallahassee. And the hiccup, as you mentioned in last year, was some of the distributors throughout the state of Florida saw that as an opportunity that we're talking about beverage alcohol bills. Well, there's some things that they would like to change. And so those things were kind of crowbarred into our bill. Ultimately, nothing happened last session. We didn't get our growler, and they weren't able to shut down our tasting rooms and ruin our businesses and all of that.
Okay, so the beer industry, as well as the liquor and wine, operate in a three-tier system here in the state of Florida. Mike, can you talk about what the three-tier system is and how it impacts the craft beer?
Sure, absolutely. So the way the system's set up is post-prohibition. You know, the United States federal government was looking for a way to make sure taxes were collected primarily, and then second of all, to make sure that the breweries, as they had merged, couldn't strong-arm vendors to only sell their beers. So the three-tier system was basically set up in the way it exists today, that there's suppliers like the four of us that are sitting up here, suppliers like Anheuser-Busch, suppliers like Miller Coors. We all make beer and we want to sell it to the market. And the way the system's set is that when we are ready to sell our beer, we sell it to a distributor, and then the distributor sells that to the retailer. So there's three tiers in the system: the suppliers, the distributors, and the retailers. You know, at times we can be at odds, but the reality is it's a very good system and it works for us because, you know, us as suppliers, we don't necessarily want the logistics of, you know, putting a keg of beer in a truck and, you know, driving it down to Cigar City Cider and Mead to put Reef Donkey on tap. You know, I'm just not going to do that. You know, we have logistical people in our industry that do that. They're called distributors, and that's what we do. Where the trouble comes in and where this current legislation and this fight comes in is, you know, there's some exceptions to the 3-tier, and one of them is that we can produce and sell beer, you know, out of our stores. And when we produce and sell beers out of our stores, whether you want to call them brew pubs or tasting rooms or microbreweries, you know, whatever you want to characterize them as, you know, that cuts into, you know, potential for profits for those guys that would normally buy our beer at wholesale and then resell it to a bar. So, you know, from a very simplistic approach, everybody wants to protect their turf. And, you know, therefore it makes this convoluted and sometimes very complicated fight that's, quite frankly, even as a person in the industry, sometimes it's hard to understand. I want to make beer, you know, hey, these guys make cider and mead over here, we want to sell it over there, and sometimes there's forces in the market that don't want to see that happen.
So, Joey, you founded probably one of the most prominent breweries in the Bay Area. Can you talk about the importance of a tasting room in Cigar City's success?
Yeah, so when you're starting I mean, a tasting room, you know, unless you've got unlimited pockets and you can throw $10 or $15 million at a brewery, a tasting room really is kind of the minor leagues. It allows you to sort of have a test case for your product. People can come, they can try it. You can start relatively small, and it creates a pretty good profit model for the brewery. So you can make that decision. If it's going well, you can take that money from a fairly profitable business, and you can sink it into what is not a very profitable business until you get economies of scale. You don't really start to be able to be a profitable distribution-only brewery until you start getting north of 20,000 barrels. I think the average brewery in Florida is about 3,000 barrels. So you can see there's a pretty big gap between, and I think, honestly, there's very few that are above 5,000 barrels in the state of Florida. So the vast majority of breweries in the state are in that smaller tier and under. And the model just doesn't work without having some direct sales. As we mentioned, the exception to the 3-tier system, the thing to bear in mind is the exception is actually the rule. The majority of states in the U.S. do have exceptions to the 3-tier system specifically for small breweries, because the reason that 3-tier there is to protect that sort of the tyranny from the big guy, so the big producer doesn't come in and push around mom and pop distributor. Well, what you then sometimes have is these distributors, these are, you know, tens and hundreds of $1 million companies, and so you have actually the inverse of that. You have, where you don't have exceptions to the 3-tier system, you have these very large companies pushing around these very small companies and determining, you know, basically how they're going to let you get to market. So as far as the importance goes, I mean, I think it's manifest. You look at the brewing industry in Florida, and it almost didn't exist beyond brew pubs until it was Mike Bryant at Dunedin Brewery who basically looked at that. The tourist exception and said, I think I'm going to do that, and he did, and it really changed the profitability of his business, and some other breweries started looking at that and said, you know, now that's a workable model. You can get to market, you don't need millions of dollars, and then you can look at what we have going on with craft beer in the Tampa area and the state, and, you know, again, it's manifest. That model works.
Okay. Speaking of the tourist exemption, can you talk about what that is? Because I know it's been in the media as of late because of a lawsuit that came up. So can you talk about it? What it is?
Yeah, there's language in the 3-tier law that you can't operate in different tiers. You can't be a producer or retailer unless you promote tourism in the state. That's written in. To the language. There's some, I've heard different theories on how it came in. Maybe Joey can talk more about that, but it seemed to come to being with the whole Anheuser-Busch thing and Busch Gardens and all that. But now all of us breweries, we've managed to get our licenses for our brew pubs or our tasting rooms because we are tourist attractions. So that's kind of how it functions.
From a history standpoint, that
Yeah.
it really was, it was designed for Anheuser-Busch and for Busch Gardens, but it always gets under my skin when they call it the Budweiser exception, because maybe I'm naive, I've just always thought that laws were written for people, and if you fit the criteria of the law, then you get to operate under the law. So I just never thought you could write a law specifically for one company. If I meet those same criteria, why couldn't I get the same treatment? So when you hear some of the representatives for the distributors, when they say, oh, well, that law was for Anheuser-Busch, it pisses me off, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think I've seen a number that recently reported in the press that craft beer alone brings $500 million to Florida. Is that right?
It's actually a little bit more.
Okay.
We're around $847 million to the Florida economy with the 2013 numbers.
Wow.
So, and if you look from 2013 to where we're here in 2015, there's been a multitude of more breweries opening up, which is more economic stimulus to our state.
Can you talk, so there was, like, middle of January, so 2 weeks ago, there was a lawsuit that was filed. And it was filed by a different group of people than had been in the fight before, the disagreement, or however you want to call it, before. Specifically at that tourist exemption. The lawsuit, as of today, I learned it was dropped. Can you talk about where it is? And can you talk about what, part of this whole thing is to inform you as an audience and as a public what you can do to help these guys and their peers continue to grow these businesses, because they have such a profound impact on our economy here in Tampa Bay. So can you talk about, like, where is it, and what can people do to help you guys get the rules to go in your favor?
So there was a lawsuit filed. They're actually suing the state, or suing the division, on how we are licensed using the tourism exception, as we kind of just briefly discussed. Yeah, there's actually 2 lawsuits that were filed by 2 different retailer organizations challenging the division in the way that we are licensed, basically saying that there's some language, and actually Mike here was one of the breweries that had used this, where they were operating as a brew pub first, and as a licensed brew pub, not a commercial manufacturing brewery, and they went and changed their license. They paid the taxes and the fees that he needed to become a commercial manufacturing brewery, which means he could sell package to go, etc. And the challenge to the rule was they didn't want a brew pub or a retailer that is already licensed to be able to change to a manufacturing license. I can only speculate as to their reasoning behind wanting to look into the division as to how they're licensing, because there's some fear that large retailers would then open up breweries and be able to circumvent the 3-tier system. So there was that group, and another group that was challenging how we're able to get around or use that tourism exception by having a brewery and or other structures on our property that promote tourism, which we're all able to do. We all offer tours. Most of us are members of Visit Florida and other organizations promoting tourism here to the state of Florida. So the 2 retail outlets challenged the ruling, and we would have to file to intervene, which is quite a cost for breweries or our trade group that we're all members of, the Florida Brewers Guild. And so we filed to intervene. Lo and behold, the 2 parties that had the lawsuit challenging the state have since dropped the lawsuit, but it has now moved into rulemaking. So basically, instead of a lawsuit where a judge gets to rule, now the committees of the DBPR are able to meet and come up with the best definition of the rule to make sure they're applying the rules properly. And what that means is it could be in rulemaking for 3 months, or it can be in rulemaking for 3 years. There's no timeline on when it's in rulemaking. Us as brewers will be able to give our comments as to where that goes in rulemaking, but we're also going to all be working collectively, legislatively, to correct any problems to that rule through our legislators, our elected officials, rather than just allowing a committee to make up the rules on how we all operate our businesses.
Yeah, just to add to what Justin's saying, the reality is we would like to just operate the way the law reads. And you know, I know I've been in a meeting with Kent and others, and we've sat down and talked with the distributors and said, why are you guys trying to change the law? Oh, the growler thing. Well, you know, screw the growler. I don't care if we fill 64-ounce growlers. The consumers want it. You know, and if they want it, then, you know, maybe you guys should, you know, get out of our way from, I mean, you can fill a tanker truck of beer for me, right? I can pull up and fill up a tanker
fill
truck.
a half-gallon.
That would be legal.
100 gallons or 100,000 gallons I could.
Yeah, but I can't fill a 64-ounce, 4-ounce growler. I mean, how ridiculous is this? So, but they made that our fight for some reason. The reality is leave us alone. Let us make beer. Let us sell the beer to the public. And you know what? We will use the logistical support of the distributors to get our beer out to where it needs to go. The fear that they try to strike into us is, well, other suppliers, and when the distributors come to us and say, well, other suppliers, they're typically talking about Budweiser or what is AB InBev, a foreign-owned company, big conglomerate that owns a lot of breweries throughout this country, as well as SAB Miller Coors now, that owns some other big breweries in this country, other suppliers like us. But they're concerned about those suppliers setting up these tiny little breweries in every retailer across the state and selling their beer out the door. You know, as far as we're concerned, that's a ridiculous assumption that they're going to do that. So we can only assume that when they use that sort of fear mongering in us, that it's being driven by a lobbyist somewhere, and that lobbyist is convincing them that that's what's going to happen. Yet, when you look at states that don't have this sort of system or self-distribution's allowed or any of these other things that you can do, it's not happening. You know, there's been some minor proposals in other states where it could have happened, but, you know, it was kind of shut down. The bottom line is, you know, laissez-faire, leave us alone. You know, let us, you know, run our businesses, sell beer to the public, to drive that revenue streams, and you know what? Maybe you know, one day we will all be brewing and selling 20,000 barrels of beer, which will actually make us profitable, you know, on the beer side. So that's really the ultimate goal. You know, as you get down to the lawsuit, I think the lawsuit was simply a challenge to get people thinking about the rulemaking process. To us as a group, it seems to have backfired in our favor, in that the lawmakers are like, you know, what the hell, we don't file lawsuits, we resolve our issues legislatively through agreement and consensus. You know, we're a democracy, you know, we're not big on lawsuits. You know, the problem with the lawsuits is, and problem with legislation, you know, as far as we're concerned, is that, you know, we're a group of small breweries, where there's 38 in just the Tampa St. Pete area right now. Across the state, we're 66 breweries. So we have 66, there's more than that now even. So how many? Okay, so we're 120 breweries here in Florida. All right?
Wait, somebody just opened. There's a new brewery.
Right, yeah, exactly. New ones opening all the time, which is fantastic, but we're a bunch of voices with a bunch of you out there who are helping us be voices, and you know, 5 million of us are calling our legislatures and telling them how we feel. The reality is on the distributor retailer side, they have come together and hired one lobbyist with one voice who's going, and they have lots of money, and they're donating to these campaigns, and with one voice, they're talking to the legislature and saying, this is what we want. Where we have this massive number of voices who are all saying, hey, we're the little guy, protect us. And that can, you know, we can be a lot of noise at times. So I guess in the end, when you talk about the lawsuit, what can you do to help us? You know what? Follow the Florida's Brewer Guild on Twitter. Follow them on Facebook, or like them, whatever you do on Twitter. And you know, take your guidance from them. And when it's time to sit back and let things happen, sit back and let it happen. When it's time to call your legislator to support a particular piece of legislation, the Florida Brewers Guild will let us know when it's time to do that, and then it's time to rally and go do that. But us, you know, as individuals who are just hacked off and we want to go pick at our lawmakers, hanging out outside their office with a sign ain't going to do it. It's noise. We have to speak with a collective voice, and then, you know, and I point to Justin, because Justin is the vice president of the Brewers Guild at the moment, and you know, they're doing a very good job of developing a strategy. And when they have a strategy, they're going to communicate it to the breweries, and hopefully, you know, all of the people who are out there that support Florida breweries follow the guild and take the guidance, and then we speak with one collective voice, because you know, the reality is we are very powerful, we have a lot of votes, but we can't be noise. We can't go off on our own.
So I want to kind of walk back, because there was a piece of legislation that came up, and the Florida Brewers Guild, amongst others, kind of activated that social media community to make phone calls and send emails to their legislators. Ultimately, the legislation never made it out of committee. Correct me if I'm wrong.
In the House. In the Senate, it went to a Senate floor vote. And I assume we're talking about last session, correct?
Yeah, last session, yeah. What went right and what went wrong in your mindset about that? Is there something consumers can do better to understand what the problem is? And could they do more? So do you want to take that?
Well, as far as what they did right, our saving grace has been, the craft beer and the local beer supporters, because they, I think most of it, myself definitely, I remember when it was really hard to find craft beer and you had to hunt for it. And I think a lot of people do remember that, and they get passionate about it, and they don't want something that they enjoy being effed with. So they really came out of the woodwork to talk, to their elected representatives. They wrote a lot of emails. They wrote, they made a lot of phone calls. And when we were actually up, in the Capitol when this was going on, and we had representatives saying they'd never seen this kind of response. I mean, you think of the most contentious legislation, tort reform, gambling, tobacco. We'd never seen this kind of response. So that's been our saving grace. Their lobbyists hire lobbyists. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend to politic people. What kept us in that fight and ultimately allowed us to win it was the people out there that buy our products, that are going way beyond what most consumers of a product would do to help out a business. So that's really what went right for us. Pretty much everything else we probably did wrong. But we're new. We're babes in the woods. This is very new to us, and we don't know how it operates up there. And there's some slick operators up there that can lobby circles around us, but we're learning. And I think you're gonna. Yeah.
The other point to not only being new is our opposition has been paying for policy and stuffing the coffers since Prohibition. Arguably, our industry, as far as getting anything done legislatively, is only 3 years old. So we're all also running businesses that we're very fortunate. I don't think anyone here is meeting demand. So we're running a business that we can't keep up with at home, and then we've got to find the time to devote to fight legislatively, and you've got to do that because that's protecting our rights to sell beer to the consumers. But at the same time, we're at home, our business is running crazy, so you've got to find that balance. And I think that is where our opposition is stronger than us, because they have people to control that message. They have people in paid positions to help lobby and to fight our efforts up on the Hill year round, where we're not able to do that. And Joey, just to touch on the comment you made about how much the consumers outreach last year, which was amazing. It was actually Senator Jack Latvala, who is a champion for craft brewers in the state of Florida, along with Dana Young and lots of other ones. But Jack Latvala actually said last session, I had an abortion bill up this year that didn't have as many comments as the craft brewers. So we did a great job of telling our people we just need to speak in a mature, unified voice together, and then we're going to be even louder.
So for me, I don't know, I see it as it's a small business issue. More than anything, it's a big, small business issue. And the fact that these are all small businesses, they're all trying to be successful. And you as a legislator who's running for office, they all campaign about supporting small business, but when they vote against craft beer, it twerks me a little, to be honest. It's just one of these things where it's like, yeah, but wait, hold on. Talking about having a mature voice, it's not an us. You have to work with the distributors. It's a part of the deal.
We legally have to work with them in the state of Florida, so that's another wrinkle to this whole argument. In our state, there is no self-distribution. So no matter how mad we get at the opposition, we're legally bound to work with these people. So no matter what happens legislatively, you know, unless we abolish the three-tier system, which I don't think any of us are hoping to do, but we have to work with these same people that we're fighting up on Capitol Hill and in the media. We ultimately can't get our beer to you unless you come to our tasting rooms, or anyone else for that matter, unless it goes through these same distributors that we're, you know, having a disagreement with at the moment.
And I would say I want to work with my distributor. If he does a good job, I'm stupid not to work with him. Just like I want to buy hops from good growers and I want to get quality barley, I want to have someone that's a partner that helps me be better at what I do. You give me, you know, 10 pallets of beer and it's up to me to get it to market. I'm not going to be as effective at that as my distributor.
Yeah, but I got the hops.
I just don't want to.
You're legally required to buy the hops from.
No, yeah, exactly. I just don't want to be forced to. I don't want you to say, no, you can only use Cascade, you can never use Galaxy, for example. And when you put a business in a situation where you say, look, I am the only way you're getting to market, there's almost no other product that's that way. You literally have to go through them. And if they're a good partner, excellent, that works great. And I'm proud to say that I have a very good partner. But that's not the case for everybody in the industry, and there is no recourse, or there's very little recourse when you don't have a good relationship.
Okay.
You can't just, this is a franchise state is what Florida is. And if you want to talk about that, how you can't just walk away from a bad supplier.
Yeah, you're locked in. Once you sign with a distributor, you are locked in for life. And that surprises a lot of people who aren't really familiar with our business. So if my distributor is not doing a good job, I can't leave. Not that I'm saying my distributor is doing a bad job, but I can't leave. I have to stick with them. I could resort to legal action if they're totally not doing their job and not wanting to deliver my beer. But then you'd spend 2 years fighting a legal battle or more while that distributor is not too happy about delivering your beer because you're suing them. So effectively, once you sign it, you're there for good. So that's one of those changes that we'd like to see in the law moving forward, is some ability to change distributors and make decisions like that.
How many, just for everyone's knowledge, how many distributors are in the state that operate here in the state?
There's, I'm throwing out a number. Well, no, there's probably a mid-30s,
Okay.
because there's distributors that are, you know, their large suppliers are Miller Coors throughout the state. There's about 6 of those. There's distributors that are ABI, Anheuser-Busch InBev, and I believe there's 23 of those. There's some small independents. There's some rogue distributors that actually like maybe operate as Anheuser-Busch in one territory, but the rest of the state they're independent. So there's a multitude of distributors, but once you sign your territory rights for a county, you can't leave, and 2 distributors can't also have the rights to the same county. So we, at Cigar City Brewing, we work with 3 wholesalers throughout the entire state of Florida. And they're on, we have Miller Coors, Anheuser-Busch, and kind of an independent. So we have a mix.
And that franchise arrangement, it's only with beer. It's not with wine, it's not with liquor. So if you're not happy with your distributor and those products, you have recourse to get out. The distributors like to call it a marriage. I say it's not a marriage because you can get out of a marriage. It might cost you half, but you can get out. It's more of really, to some way, it's indentured servitude, because even if you don't like it, you're in it.
Yeah, but let me just make one point about the distributors. You know, we talk about these distributors in categories of Anheuser-Busch or Miller Coors or whatnot. Now, I'm not going to sit here and defend distributors because I'm not in that tier, but distributors are small businesses too.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You know, Pepin Distributing, which is down the street on 50th Ave, you know, they're owned by Tommy Pepin, and his family is all involved in that business, and they're a small family, you know, small business as well. They're on a different scale than some of our small family businesses.
They're a little bigger than small.
Yeah, I say that a little tongue in cheek, but the reality is they provide a necessary service as a small business in this state. We typically throw them in the category, and as like Justin was saying, you know, hey, we have the Miller Coors and the AB guys. Not to get it confused, because Miller Coors is a supplier. Anheuser-Busch is a supplier, just like Stone is a supplier, and Oscar Blues is a supplier, and Sierra Nevada and Cigar City and Coppertailed are all suppliers. We're all on that side, on the supply side. But the reality is that when you look at history, The last 20 years notwithstanding, but you look at history up to the last 20, up to 20 years ago, there really was, your choices in beer was, the Miller, the Coors, Budweiser, Bud Light, Bud Light Lime, all the choices of beer, and that was it. And so distributors fell into that category. Oh, you're an AB guy or you're a Miller Coors guy, and that's how the distributors are aligned. And even when I'm talking in the vernacular with these guys, yeah, we're signed up with the AB guys. Well, they're really not AB guys. They're local small businesses. Tommy Pepin cleans the Veterans Expressway north of Gun Highway. I mean, he has the T. Pepin Heart Hospital. I mean, he has he has a school for autistic kids. He helps in the community and everything else. It's a wonderful thing. We're not fighting against his business. We're fighting against his business, stopping our business from being successful as well. That's it. It's just a very subtle thing in the law, and we're not picking on distributors, we're not picking on the other suppliers, the big guys. Now we're going to make fun of Anheuser-Busch because they had this stupid commercial in the Super Bowl.
Pumpkin peach ales for everyone.
Just so you're all aware, Tampa Bay Brewing Company
What do you hate puppies?
I love puppies. I heard they put puppies in Bud, but I don't know. Just kidding. But Tampa Bay Brewing Company will be doing a pumpkin peach beer very soon. But this is how we fight back.
You do it the hard way?
Yeah, we're gonna do it. Actually, we do it the easy way. I'm gonna have Dave do it. But I mean, the thing is, it's this fight and struggle, and here we are, a small local business fighting with another small local business, but they have a hell of a lot more money. They have a hell of a lot better of a unified voice. And the reality is we're not asking, we didn't ask for change. They're imposing change upon us. And as the little guy with change being imposed upon us, we're pissed. I mean, come on, just leave us the hell alone. In their defense, they're coming back and saying, well, hey, there's this exception in the law. Well, the reality is
since 1964.
Yeah, there is no exceptions in the law. The law is the law. Right?
Amen.
It's just the law.
Yeah.
The law applied to AB, the law applies to CCB, the law applies to Coppertail, it applies to me. It's just the law. So, okay, well, we want to change the law. And this is literally a conversation that I had with Tommy Pepin. I sat across the table and I'm like, the law is the law. There is no exception to the law. It's just what it is. The law says you can do this or you can do that, and if you meet these conditions, you can do this. Why are you changing the law? Just leave it alone. Let it say, well, we need to more clearly define what the law allows you to do. Okay, well, I get that, but let's not do it in a way that stops us from doing what we're trying to do and trying to make money. I mean, I got $5 million sunk into a muddy pit in the ground over in West Chase. I mean, pretty soon it won't be a muddy pit anymore, I promise. But I mean, I have $5 million stuck into that project. And when it's done in May, I want to make sure that it can be profitable. If I can't sell beer out of there and I got to take the beer out the back door and bring it in the front door after I rebuy it, it's going to be tough. Simple as that. Leave it alone.
One of the things, so when I was doing all the research, I watched, there was a Senate committee hearing. And I guess I knew this, but didn't know this as a consumer. But if I walk into an establishment like B21 or Total Wine, or even Publix, they can pour me a glass of wine, right? They can pour me a sample of liquor, but they can't pour me beer. Is that just one of the little quirky laws we have in the state of Florida?
Yeah, fermented malt beverages require a COP license to do samples.
Consumption on premise.
Consumption on premise. COP stands for consumption on premise, whereas spirits and wine are not subject to the same restriction. Okay. So you can go and, so if I'm a winemaker, like Two Henrys, a little shout out. So if I'm a winemaker and I wanted to, have my wine sampled at Publix, I could just set up a little stand and give out some samples to wine to those 21 and older. But if I'm a beer maker, I don't enjoy that same privilege. So you will see beer sampled in some stores, don't be confused. Some of those stores, like I did an ABC up in Wesley Chapel, they have a COP license. So we can consume on premise, we can do samples in the store. Most places do not. It's expensive to get the license. You pay the extra taxes. You have to maintain it. But yeah, it's kind of a silly thing. In addition, because we own a brewery, we can't distill spirits. If you have a winery, If you have to separate your facilities. I mean, there's all kinds of goofy things in the laws. I mean, I don't know. I'm a fan of deregulation and smaller government. That's just me. You know, I mean, why are we being restricted? You know, let's be creative and be happy people. Drive tourism, drive more revenue. Let's get more people to the state.
Okay, so one of our quick chats, what part of our chat back there was talking about, it's not just the legislators that we can be reaching out to. There's a lot of other people that if we're concerned about supporting the craft beer industry, and like I'm a consumer of it, I should be reaching out to everybody from my city council members to the county board of commissioners to even the chambers of commerce. So just, you want to jump on that?
All those groups are very invested in sort of contributing to the quality of life in an area, and that's, you know, it's something that our mayor here in Tampa talks about a lot, is not just attracting, you know, young talent to come here, but also to keeping the ones that are here already from leaving. And when you look around the country and you see places that are successful at that, Austin, San Diego, Portland, Seattle, Colorado, there's a theme. All of those states have really good beer laws. Now, I understand people don't make a decision to move to an area just for beer. Well, I might. Some
stay somewhere?
Some people might. But you're looking at it. You're looking at culture. You're looking at things to do. You're looking at great restaurants. You're looking at the total scene. And craft beer has a place in that. And no one is ever going to graduate from college, look at the map of the U.S. and go, they have really effective Miller Coors distributors. I'm going there. But the overall scene for you know, the backdrop of what's going on in an area, that is going to play in, and craft beer is a part of that, just like anything else. So those groups that are in charge of sort of making the city better for tomorrow, city council, chamber of commerce, any kind of groups like that, you can reach out to them and let them know that it's important to you. And most of these people have those kind of connections that, you know, that they are in meetings with elected representatives and they can bend their ear and say, hey, you know, this craft beer thing, we like that. What's going on with that?
Yep. I can say that after going to school in North Carolina in Boone for 4 years, I went through craft beer shock because there wasn't anything here in 2004, barely. So, I mean, if I had to do it over again, I probably wouldn't pick here, knowing how much I cared about craft beer, but I'm glad I'm here.
North Carolina is one of those states that is really the model. They have excellent laws for small breweries. They have higher taxes on beer than Florida, and I think they're 4th or 5th highest. I know you've got a brother who has a brewery, so you could talk to their laws, but they have great laws, and they're attracting breweries left and right, and they've got really high taxes on beer, so they're taking in great revenue.
Yeah, and they have realistic franchise law. They have limited self-distribution. I mean, all those things that really allow...
Tasting rooms,
all those things that really allow little breweries to thrive, they have codified in their law. And as a result, I mean, Asheville, North Carolina has become the home of, you know, the likes of Oscar Blues, New Belgium Brewing, Sierra Nevada just built, what did they spend? 300?
The Taj Mahal of craft beer.
I mean,
all the millions. I think they spent all the millions.
I mean, it's insane. You know, the economic development you can create. And now there's one stat you should walk away from this panel discussion. We are 45th in the country, in Florida, for craft breweries per capita being 100,000. So we're 45th in the country for states for craft beers, but we're number 12 in economic impact due to those craft breweries.
And number 3 in population.
And number 3 in population. I mean, think about that for a minute. Now, if you have a lawmaker that when you get on the phone and say, you know, we really need to keep this system intact, and they say, well, you know, does it really drive tourism? Well, hell yeah, it does. We're 45th in the number of breweries, but we're number 12 in terms of economic impact. I mean, think about that. I mean, I have you know, we use Yelp and we use TripAdvisor, we use all that stuff for reviews for our business, right? Well, when I see the Yelp touches to my business, I mean, every third touch is from somebody outside of the state. Every third touch, whether they clicked our website, pressed the button to call our business, you know, got directions, looked at our menu, looked at our reviews, whatever else. Every third one is from somebody out of state.
I can say St. Somewhere is my home brewery because that's the one closest to my house, and every single Thursday and Friday, because they're only open Thursday and Friday night for tastings, for tours. every single time I'm there, there's somebody from really far away, like not even close to Florida.
Exactly. And, sorry, Justin. I'm a talker, man.
Go for it.
So, our business is down the street, and we get, we've been on TV nationally and whatnot. Well, so it brings all these people in. So we see these people every day from all over God's creation, Canada and Belgium and Germany and England, that are coming in, and because of that, it does drive tourism. So if you want to support craft beer, go to Coppertail Tap House and support craft beer.
And we're a tourism state.
Well, I'd just like to point out real quick, for anyone that doesn't know, we're actually sitting in the building that was the original Tampa Bay Brewing Company. We're kind of sitting on where the bar would have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so they were successful. They moved into bigger digs, and I mean, that's the classic American story. They started up small, and they've continued to grow and improve and get better.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Joey. Yeah, we opened in here 20 years ago. This year, July 31st of 1995, our brewery opened in this building. And actually, I was telling these guys before this started, this is the first time I've been in this building since my brother's funeral was held here. And so it's kind of a creepy feeling for me a little bit, but you know what? You've done an awesome job here, man.
Thank you.
It's nice, and the Doble family loves to see that this is back to brewing. It's fantastic.
I was just going to talk about what people can do.
Yep.
Kind of back a topic or so. Certainly, yeah, talk to anybody you can talk to that you love craft beer, that you support craft beer, that you like tasting rooms, that you like growlers. We're going to try and do a better job of getting information out to our followers and to the craft beer community. So when something really sensitive is going on, when there's a vote coming up, when there's an important committee meeting coming up, we're going to try and let everybody know and make sure that you're seeing it in your social media. And then sending, making 1 or 2 phone calls, sending out 3 or 4 emails, any little thing you can do like that helps. Like Joey said, we really did hear from senators last year that said, I heard from more constituents on this issue than I've heard from on any issue in a long time. So that, I think, helps a lot. Also, the Florida Brewers Guild is going to be introducing some new memberships soon so that enthusiasts can get involved, and which I think is a great idea.
Long time coming.
It takes money to defend our rights. They've got lobbyists that are getting paid big bucks. We have a lobbyist that doesn't get paid big bucks.
Part-time.
So we need to fund him and get him fighting. Do you want to say anything about the new memberships coming up, Justin?
Sure. I mean, the Florida Brewers Guild is going to be introducing enthusiast members, as Kent said, and then I don't know who all it'll affect in this room, but there's going to be allied trade memberships. We're also going to give a seat at the table for distributors to have a membership, because they are the people that we need to work with. They won't be a voting member in our policy, but it will be great to be able to sit down with them and have those conversations of people that we have to do business with.
Okay. I want to open it up to questions to the floor. So if any of you guys have questions, I've got a mic that you can take. Go for it.
I have a question for you guys. Part of the audience here is here because of Tampa Bay Startup Week, so they might be viewing you as entrepreneurs, small business owners solving problems, and you're up against some existing rules that may or may not, do you favors. So we've got Tesla, which is a car company, and they're up against distributorships and all that stuff, and we've got Uber, who can give you rides, but they're up against taxi stuff. I just want to get your impressions about the broader landscape of competition and rules and freedom and delivering value to customers. I know that's a kind of a random question, but I'm sure you guys can handle it.
In my case, I love disruption. And most of those, the things you talked about, those are disruptive, relatively new technologies or refined technologies. Uber, regardless of what you feel about the company, the concept is great. And I think, when you have the local board, the Hillsborough County Transportation Board, to me it looks like they're legitimately invested in protecting a bad experience. And and I'm just, it's all anecdotal. I've ridden in some cabs and I've ridden in some Ubers, and I've always had a vastly superior experience in the Uber. With Tesla, I know, New Jersey, they basically said, look, if you want to sell cars in our state, you got to sell it to an existing distributor, something I can identify with, or you can't come into the state, and obviously that's going to affect sales. So anytime you have disruptive technologies, you're going to have clashes with the existing framework of law and the old guard of people who like it just fine the way it is. Thank you very much. So obviously, I can commiserate with the problems that they have, because I think that's the same problem that we're having. In our case, I'd say the laws we have are okay. They could be better. I just don't want them to get worse.
Yeah, I think we're definitely a disruptive force, and we're making people scared, and they're reacting by trying to push us down, just like they're trying to push down Uber and the electric car, whose name I forgot. Tesla, yeah, thank you. But I think I'm an optimist at heart, and so I really think what we have on our side and what those companies have on their side is public opinion, the voters, and the consumers. We believe that we are offering a superior product to the people, and they're going to see that, they're going to buy it, and that's what they're going to want. And I believe the same thing with those other companies. It's just going to take time, but if the voters and consumers are behind it, then I think we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I mean, we started in this building 20 years ago because my brother Johnny said, I'm tired of people drinking dull, flavorless beer, and the market sucks. I mean, when fermented malt beverage is Zima, we got to do something about it, It's funny because you put a post about Zima not long ago, and I used to give my brother crap all the time. Hey, when are you coming up with the formula for Zima? But in all seriousness, I mean, we, from a small business perspective and a competition perspective, I mean, we group ourselves. The four of us are up here on stage. We're representing 3 companies. We group ourselves together as craft. The reality is in the market, we're all kind of competitors. I think my beer's better than his and his and his, but that's where the market decides, But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be an ass to Ken or to Joey or to Justin. You know what? We're all banded together as a group of craft community. I mean, that's what we are. And you know what? One thing that we sometimes forget, and as small business owners, and I'm talking about the local hardware guy. I'm talking about the local guy who delivers water softener salt to your house. Not pick it up at the gas station by the pump. I'm talking about the guy who sells products on Main Street. I mean, we all have to be more conscious about supporting those Main Street retailers. No different than what we're doing. But the reality is that as competitors, we've banded together and we've formed community. So if you have entrepreneurs out here in the audience or are going to watch this video eventually, you know what? Tap into the resources in your local community and talk to other guys. I mean, when we all talk to new brewery owners or guys who want to open a new brewery, honestly, we're sitting here talking about a lot of very negative things, and the reality is this business is kick-ass. I mean, we would not do anything different. I mean, we drink a lot of beer, we have fun, we collaborate. Just tonight when I arrived, I traded a bottle of beer with this guy, and that's what we do because it's fun, and that's what this business is all about. And so when if you're entrepreneurs who are out there who are going to go out and open a shop on Main Street, collaborate with the guy down the street who's got some paint and the guy down the street who maybe does hardware, and I'm going to sell grills, and that's what it's all about. It's about collaboration and community, and we want to be the Main Street gathering spot. You know what? When I go to Bar X, and I'm going to pick on something I probably should. Bar X in International Plaza, which is the same vanilla bar that's over in Clearwater, the same vanilla bar that's in Atlanta. It's not the same as when I go to Cigar City Cider and Mead and I see the same guy at the bar, every Thursday when I happen to have, my kids at soccer so I can get home a little late and I can show up here and have a couple ciders or whatever. I mean, I see that same guy, and it's about gathering and community and, hey, what happened with your week and what happened, what's going on? I mean, that's what it's about, and that's what entrepreneurship, and the reality is that's what patriotism is all about. We're all connected because we're Americans and we're patriotic and we have connections with the people around us. In my view, the craft brewery has become the new, you know, the new place where people gather. You know, it's the Domino's on the street corner with the old guys, you know, shooting the breeze and chewing the fat. That now happens inside the craft breweries in your local community. And that's our view, and that's our view of the world. And that's why when you come down to Tampa Bay Brewing Company, if I see you more than once, I'm probably going to try to remember your name. I won't probably remember, but I'm going to try. You know, and that's the way it is, and that's how we try to do business.
All right, anybody else get questions? Yep.
What was your major hurdle for starting your breweries?
Money.
Why are you extremely locked into having one distributor?
The distributor piece, we're locked in legislatively. Once we assign a county, we cannot get out of that arrangement unless, of course, they decide.
Not easily.
No, lifetime. Literally, as we talked about, it's for life. We're one of the few industries like that, and I kind of wanted to bring it up earlier, but not only can we not get out of it, it's an asset that they can later sell. If they decide to sell their business, they can then sell and profit on our distribution rights, and there's nothing that says we get any of that. We don't get to share in that revenue. So they get it for free from us, and then once that happens, you know, we're making the best go of it. And then we could sit down at a table and negotiate an exit, but there is no legal clear exit for us besides the lawsuit in the 2 years and all of that Kent discussed.
And the reasoning behind that initially, from what I understand, is that it was to protect the distributors. The distributors used to be the small businesses, and the breweries used to be the huge businesses. Think about Budweiser and Miller and all that. Now it's kind of flipped. Now the distributors are bigger than most of the breweries, and yet they still have this legislative bargaining power that's way bigger than ours. So I think it is time to start looking at some franchise reform and changing that in the future. I think there's good reasons there.
And one thing that Ken just said that jarred my memory is we think of these franchise laws in the state of Florida being around since Prohibition. Our actual franchise laws are around, as old as about 1986. So they're not as old as
newer than the tasting room laws.
Right.
Yes, and you know, when some of the franchise laws were around, it was, you know, to put a little history on what Ken said, there was about, you know, a couple hundred breweries and 3,000 distributors. Now distributors are merging and taking acquisitions, and the breweries, there's over 3,000 craft breweries in the state of Florida, so it really has flip-flopped as to what it was. So I think there is time. It is the time to readdress some of that.
And as for the biggest hurdles in starting a brewery, I think we mentioned money, and then also there's money and money. And then there was, and then time, and everything taking longer and costing more.
Money.
Yeah, more money. Yeah.
It's a very capital-intensive business.
I think we all hit that a few times.
Yeah, and for me, it was money. But you know, one thing I would say that was sort of a blessing. You were talking about how, you know, how this Tampa Bay Brewing Company was open because someone finally said, you know what, I'm tired of the shit. I'm just gonna make beer I like. And I was a customer of, you know, I would come to this brewery because I didn't like what I could get, and I would do it. So I would say the things that I didn't know that I could go back and fix, it would be stupid if I did, because for me, getting into the industry, I educated myself enough to know sort of what I was getting into, but if I had really, really, really known, I probably wouldn't have done it. So it's one of those things where you almost don't want to go back and fix what you don't know too much, because the heavy lifting that's going to be required, if you know, it's almost like if you know how big the mess is, then thinking about cleaning up is going to be just too much to bear. It's better to, you know, it's like you pulling the thorn. I'd rather it be done by surprise kind of thing, because we ran into so many issues of money, obviously, just not seeing what's going to be in front of you the next day. Ran into some issues with inspectors that didn't see things our way. But generally, I would say it is a good thing sometimes to not know what you're getting into, because it will scare you away.
You know, and then you have those competitors, and in like 8 short years are making like 10 times more beer than you are. That's always an obstacle.
Thanks for paving the road.
No.
Anybody else have any questions? Yep, right here, Joe.
You guys know that I go on social media once in a while talking about beer.
You need a job.
But the conversations about what's going on in Florida and who's to blame, so to speak. Let's, count this black versus white, craft versus whoever. It's hard to pin down who the bad guys are. I mean, you see everything from it's the distributors to it's the Trilateral Commission, the Illuminati trying to destroy small business as we know it. Who are? I mean, there's people standing there with pitchforks and torches ready to go after someone. But who are the bad guys?
I'd like to talk about that for a minute, because I fully believe there are no bad guys.
It's not that black and white.
There are no bad guys, and I just want to paraphrase Gerard's question, so that it's anybody watching this video can hear what the question was. In general, his question was, who are the bad guys? We've talked a lot about the legislation. We've talked about a lot of things, a lot of challenges that we face as suppliers versus distributors versus retailers. And Gerard asked the question, who are the bad guys in this mix? And I would presume that the follow-on is how do we go after those bad guys to convince them that they shouldn't be such bad guys? Because that's kind of what we do as Americans, right? But the reality is there are no bad guys. We have groups of people with their own interests who are trying to protect their interests. Other small business owners like ourselves who are locally owned, people that I know that I see all the time, that, like Tom Pepin and J. Paul Pepin and those guys that own a small business down the street who happens to be our distributor. And they're just trying to protect their interests, and they're like, hey, we're not a bad guy. We're just trying to make sure that the law is very clear as what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do and this and that. And my answer is, I get it, and I think I think the law should be changed to be very clear, but don't screw us in the process. And that's really the point. It's sometimes what happens is, you've heard the analogy from your history teacher that, we're in a democracy and we have a representative government, but you know what? You don't ever want to go to a sausage factory to see how the sausage is made. I think, somewhere in the sausage factory, we got a little bit of an issue. And, the lobbyists get involved, and like Joey said, the lobbyists hire some lobbyists, which, as absurd as that sounds, it's true. And that goes on, and then, the let's protect my interest without harming you turns into let's protect only my interest, because when I protect only my interest, we'll work our way back from there. And that's not how we want to do business. In general, we're not those kinds of people. We're typically creative, reasonable discussion, let's solve problem, entrepreneurial type people. And we're dealing with lobbyists and paid people who, basically go to the nth degree because they know it's going to get backed off. Well, we don't work that way. And that's where it gets the appearance that there's bad guys and good guys. If I had to pick a bad guy, it would be the lobbyist who's making a shit ton of money creating this acrimony, so that there's acrimony on our side, acrimony on their side, and all this acrimony costs all of us a lot of money. When the reality is the reasonable people behind paying those lobbyists are actually just want to do something and get something done that's fairly reasonable.
Who's paying the lobbyists?
In the end, the lobbyists that are against us, I would say, are the Wholesalers Association in the state, which there's maybe 35 members of the Wholesalers Association.
There's two main associations, and they represent AB InBev and Miller Coors distributors.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say to speak to that, again, it's more of a gray. It's not a black and white. But if you turn the tables, if the Florida Brewers Guild ever gets to a point where they want to legislate themselves an advantage to the detriment of someone else in one of the other tiers, I'm going to come out vehemently against the Florida Brewers Guild and shout from the rooftops that they're being assholes. And while I'm not saying that necessarily puts a black hat on anybody, legislating an advantage that puts handcuffs on someone else and affects their business, while it may not be bad in the strictest sense, it ain't cool.
We've got, we're right about an hour, so if we can get any last comments, that'd be awesome. So if you've got anything you'd like to add?
Thank you guys for coming out and taking an interest in entrepreneurship and craft beer in the state of Florida. I think it's huge for our growing area, especially here in Tampa. We're a tourism state. We all enjoy not having a state income tax because we have these tourists coming, and that's a reason a lot of people want to start businesses here as well. And it was mentioned, you know, what can you do to support? You can always, you know, continue to support your local breweries, order from their tap rooms as well as finding it out on the shelves. And as it was mentioned by Mike, you know, support other local businesses as well, like local retailers. If you find issue, you know, it doesn't do you any good to boycott a brewery because they're handcuffed on who can sell their beer if you're mad at who's selling their beer. But you can go to the retailers like Stein and Vine and Brandon and support those retailers and get those retailers, you know, let them know your story. We talked about who to talk to. Talk to those retailers that are supporting the same interests that you have. And once again, thanks for coming out and listening to all of us babble.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming out and listening to us rattle, because sometimes I say some really dumb things. Hopefully I haven't said anything really dumb tonight. But what I will say is, if you do have a mind to start a small business or to start a brewery, which would be great, you know, talk to us. You know, we're not going to turn you away. We're not going to like hide our secrets. You know, the secret recipe book isn't going to be stuffed underneath the mattress. We're going to help you out. We'll give you good advice. We'll help you get going, because as far as we're all concerned, and I'll speak for all of us, unless you guys start shaking your head, the more of us that there are out there, the stronger our voice is, and the stronger our collective voice is to the legislature. And you know what? We do drive tourism in this state, and I can't say it enough. I mean, I have people travel from all over the world that come to our place. I would challenge any of you right now to walk down the street, Tampa Bay Brewing Company, and just poll a few people. I guarantee you'll find somebody from Europe, you'll find somebody from South America, and you'll find somebody, or at least a dozen people, from somewhere elsewhere in the country. I mean, it does drive tourism, and I think when you talk to your legislatures, and the last thing I'm going to leave you with is you should talk to your legislators, and let them know that you're interested in craft beer, you're interested in driving our economy, you're interested in, you know, the 60 jobs that we're going to create in West Chase when that place is open in May. You're interested in that sort of thing. And that when you are interested in that sort of thing, that means you patronize those sorts of places, and you don't patronize those places that stand against that. Simple as that. So finally, as an entrepreneur ourselves, I just challenge you. You know, go out there, jump in the water. It feels really cold when you first get in, but after a while it warms up a little bit and you get used to it, and you know, pretty soon you're swimming around and you're in that entrepreneurial pool.
I'm still waiting
really
for my warm spot.
There you go.
Sorry.
That's the key.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that warm spot. I haven't found it yet.
Drink enough reef donkey, you'll find the warm spot.
I would just say to you guys, thank you for your interest in craft beer. They have a ton of money, our opponents. They have lobbyists. The huge advantage we have that's been the equalizing force so far is you guys. So we can bring votes to the table. We can bring publicity to the table through you guys. So please continue to watch what's going on. Don't let them get away with it. Just watch what's going on, talk about it, and I think it's all going to come out all right.
Anything else? You good? Toby?
Yeah, you know, one last thing I would say, you know, I still drink Reef Donkey, I still drink Night Swim Porter because I like those beers and I like the people that make them, and any disagreements I may have with the distributor are separate from that. And I think that's really important. I like what these guys do. It's why I got into this industry, is because I really like well-made beer. And so that is something to remember. Justin brought it up. Boycotts don't really help anybody, but you can choose to support the people in the industry that you see that are doing it right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, all of you. I really, really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. This is where we link arms and sing Kumbaya.
It's still a 99% asshole-free industry.
Amen.
All right, thank you so much.